So I'm going to walk us through a few use cases with Canvas today. The first one here being looking at from demand all the way to financial impact of this. So what we're going to see is one continuous conversation with Canvas. So we're not changing screens, pulling up reports. We're asking business question in plain language, and then we're following the thread. The data that we have in this first use case is on consumer electronics planning, but the logic you'll see applies to any industry. So we're watching for the way that Canvas reasons, not necessarily the product names. To give a little bit of an introduction here on the first use case, what we'll see is we want to start where a planning team and notice that their forecast is off. So we want to investigate into that and drill down a little bit into where that forecast is off to find the root cause. And then from there, we'll also figure out and look at the exposure. Where might that be causing excess inventory? And then even turn that into a dollar value to figure out what is that actually costing us to do it. So we'll go ahead and jump in here with our first look at the screen on Canvas. And I do want to point out here, you'll notice this is a video. And the reason that we have that is because when I ask Canvas questions, it can take anywhere from 15 to 60 seconds to come through. So you'll see I'm following the exact same thread. I've just cut out some of that time in the middle with the response times. And that can depend based on the level of detail and the complexity of the questions. So with our first look here at our Canvas screen, you'll see that I get a couple of suggestions that we may want to ask. But we're going to start here with this conversation of, did we get the forecast right? So I'm not going to tell Canvas exactly where to look, but I want to start with a question about our supply chain. So where's our forecast most over or under? You'll notice here, one of the first things Canvas wants to do is clarify and make sure that it understands the thread. So if I'm not very specific on a question, then it'll make sure that it is understanding exactly where we're going with it. So looking at this from where are we over or under sales in the last 8 weeks? Now, across the entire portfolio, we're running about 6% under forecast, but the average is hiding the story. So one thing we'll see there is the Prolaptop 5550 is under forecast by 62%. So we sold roughly 11,400 units against a forecast of about 4,300. So that 7,000 units of demand we completely missed on one line. So notice here what Canvas did on its own. It didn't just flag the one product, but it also saw another product in the same family is under by 17% and noticed a family level pattern. So it's giving us a recommendation here to recalibrate the entire family, not just the one line. So from here, the next thought would be, okay, well, we see maybe where we're under forecast. Do we have specific customers that might be driving this specific sales uplift? So now I'm going to go through and ask Canvas about those customers that might be driving the uplift. And we'll see here that it's not just one account. It looks like here we're getting the card showing us where those accounts sit. We see a breakdown of the donut chart, but every single one of our 10 active customers is beating the forecast. So right there we see it's more on the baseline. Canvas is drawing the conclusion for us here. When every account misses in the same direction, the problem isn't the customers, it's the baseline. So the model, we may need to go back and analyze. But there's a heavy head to it here where we have 2 accounts, looking at California and DC, for about 50% of the total uplift. Now we're going to switch over here from demand side to look more at the balance sheet because we expect that we'd have some extra inventory. We want to know where the financial impact of this and what it's actually costing us. So Canvas is coming back and telling us we do have a significant holding of about 285 million in inventory. Roughly 107 million of that is excess to our requirements. So that's 30% of our holding value tied up in stock that we don't need. So it's concentrated across gaming, consumer laptops, commercial notebooks, and the highest one there is our Prolaptop P series with over $41 million sitting on 94 weeks of inventory. So it breaks it down for us there in the table, gives us all the products within those business units, tells us the overall average weeks of supply and the holding value, all in one table from the single question. Now, if we know what that total is across those different units, the next thing I might want to know is what locations are actually holding this largest share of that stranded inventory. Because we know the headline there, if we have $107 million on it, but we need to know where it physically sits first to be able to act on it. So here we'll drill down into it. and we see here that we have all 3 sites in the US, about 2.75 million of holding costs, and Atlanta has the largest share at 54%, Austin at 35, and Fremont at 11. But if we look at the weeks of supply, because that's really where the watch out is here, Fremont is sitting on over 1,000 weeks of supply. So that's a lot of stock with our current sell-through rate. Atlanta is also better. It's at about 600. But this isn't really slow moving. It's effectively our obsolete. So Canvas is turning that into a decision for us here. Where we want to understand what that is financial impact. Now we'll go back to looking at here for our forecasting and want to see what would happen if we ran a scenario here looking at over forecasting and for just our largest customer by 5, 10, and 15%. So if we're too optimistic, what we can see is Canvas is going to run this scenario for us, not changing anything in the live plan. It's bringing it back to us. And it gives us a breakdown of all the different forecasts in the system. So from our sales manager, demand plan, consensus, and the consensus revenue. And it breaks it down even further into the months below it. So at 15% over, we see that's nearly 2,000 extra units and about 790,000 of inflated revenue signal cascading throughout the plan. So the danger is not just in the revenue line, but really what the inflated forecast is going to trigger downstream. So Canvas notices that we'll run the replenishment engine to build to it. Safety stock gets set too high, and we're going to manufacture too much product. So this is really where we sit with having too much product on hand. You'll also notice there towards the bottom that it even flags our 10% use case as being one of the most dangerous because of blended price swings in the week. And going through that, we see it's also cascading across all of the measures, right? So looking at the reasoning of the risk and figuring out where is it wrong, what does that do to our inventory impact, and then bringing that in from a financial perspective as well. So overall, what we saw in that use case going from the conversation is where is our forecast miss? How much excess inventory do we have on hand and the total cash at risk for one of our customers? And then going across the entire supply chain. So not just looking at one of those measures, but really all the way from demand to supply, the entire supply chain plan throughout the system.
Grant, I have a quick question. You showed that there's a Canvas just did not just report a 62% forecast miss, but it decided that it mattered and really kind of highlighted it. But can you explain a little bit what's actually happening under the hood? That how a genuine under forecast is separated from just noise?
Yeah, so Canvas is really doing reasoning here and understanding not just where we have maybe an issue with one of our products, it wants to point that out, but also does the reasoning to better understand it might not just be one specific SKU, but really the family as a whole that we need to do a recalibration on. So then the other ones, it's not going to find as important to really do the analysis on it. It wants to pinpoint you as to where to look at. So that's really where the variance comes in from Canvas and doing the reasoning and helping on the decisions rather than just providing pure information that you have to drill down further into.
Thank you. I had you went from what is wrong with the forecast, or what's wrong with the forecast, to which customer or who is causing it. And you saw that all 10 accounts were beating the forecast. How does that change what a planner kind of does on today on a Monday morning?
Yeah, so identifying that really helps us to figure out that it's broad-based across all of our customers. So we're not chasing one customer trying to look at the uplift just there. It's really something in the entire replenishment there. So it's looking more at really what kind of a problem do we have and what are the next steps. So it helps to identify that for the planner.
Okay. So essentially, Canvas is reasoning, and instead of so it's kind of understanding a trend across customers versus highlighting the one customer that has had the most change, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it can do both. It wants to point both out, but really highlighted it. Do you need to chase one customer and figure out where your forecast may be incorrect there, or is it more across an entire family or the entire portfolio?
Okay. Thanks, Grant.
Perfect. So I'm going to walk us through